The broadcast went live across the galaxy. It was not a warning, not a declaration of war. It was an execution. On thousands of worlds, in space stations, and aboard ships traveling through the void. Beings of all races paused as the Dominion's message was forcefully transmitted. Screens flickered to life, and what they saw would haunt the universe forever. A young human child, no older than 7, stood alone in a cold metal room. Terrified, chains bound her small wrists, her fragile body shaking as she sobbed. Behind her, 2 massive Dominion warriors loomed, their reptilian scales glinting under the harsh lights. A voice, distorted and cruel, filled the airwaves. "This is what happens to those who defy the Dominion." The child looked up, her teary blue eyes full of fear, but also something else, defiance. Even in her final moments, she did not beg. She did not plead. She stared straight at the camera, as if looking at every human across the stars. And then, without hesitation, the Dominion warrior raised his blade. The last thing the universe saw was the child closing her eyes. Then, a single, brutal strike. The screen went black. Silence fell over the galaxy. Then the second broadcast began. It was from Earth. A single message. No threats. No speeches. No warnings. Just 7 words. "You have 24 hours to surrender. Choose wisely." The Galactic Council watched in shock. For years, the Dominion had ruled through fear, conquering worlds, enslaving species, and destroying civilizations without consequence. No one had ever dared to challenge them. But now, they had done something far worse. They had killed a human child. And the universe would soon learn what that mistake would cost them. The Dominion High Command laughed. In their war chambers, surrounded by towering walls of holographic displays and tactical readouts, the Dominion warlords watched Earth's message with amusement. 24 hours. Supreme Warlord Xortal chuckled, his fanged mouth twisting into a sneer. "They think they can threaten us." His generals laughed with him, their clawed hands tapping on the stone table. To them, humans were nothing. An insignificant species, a race that had barely stepped beyond their own solar system. They had fought minor skirmishes before, but this, challenging the Dominion, it was suicide. "Let them come," one of the warlords growled. "They will learn what true power is." But something was different. Across the Dominion-controlled worlds, there was unease. The Galactic Council had not responded. No one had. Usually, after such an execution, the other species would grumble but ultimately remain silent, too afraid to challenge the Dominion's rule. This time, there was only silence, and in that silence, something terrifying began to take shape. Because while the Dominion left, Earth did not. The 24-hour deadline passed. At the exact second, the timer reached 0. The first Dominion military outpost vanished. A massive explosion, brighter than a star, consumed an entire space station orbiting Draxul, one of their key fortress worlds. Before the Dominion forces could react, 6 more bases fell, detonated, infiltrated, or outright erased from existence. Then came the real horror. Their fleets stopped responding. Entire battleships vanished from their patrol routes, their last transmissions full of screaming and static. The Dominion was under attack. Not by a grand armada, not by a slow and overwhelming invasion, but by something far worse. Precision, cold, unstoppable. For the first time in history, the hunters had become the hunted. Panic spread through the Dominion like a disease. Warlord Xortal's fists slammed onto the command table, cracking the stone beneath his claws. "How is this possible?" he roared, his eyes burning with fury. "Where is our fleet? Where are our soldiers?" No one had an answer. Reports came in, but they made no sense. Dominion warships were being destroyed, but not in battle. There were no enemy fleets, no grand armadas invading their systems. Instead, entire ships simply stopped responding, one by one, like lights flickering out in the darkness. On outposts, security teams would hear a single noise before their comms went silent. A metallic click, followed by a whisper of movement. When reinforcements arrived, they found only empty corridors and blood. The Dominion had ruled the galaxy through terror. Now, they were the ones who were afraid. Then, a transmission arrived. Not on the Dominion's official channels, not through secure lines. It simply appeared on every screen in the Dominion High Command. A single human voice spoke. Calm. Cold. This is not war. This is justice. The screen flickered, and the warlords froze. Footage played. Their own security feeds. Dominion soldiers, elite warriors, slaughtered in the shadows. A human figure, armored in black, moving like a ghost through their most secure facilities. No alarms. No warning. Just death. Then, the screen went black, and the voice returned. You are being erased. The Dominion finally understood. Earth was not coming for revenge. They were delivering judgment. The Dominion's homeworld, Dominion Prime, had never known fear. It was the heart of their empire, a planet wrapped in layers of defenses, orbital cannons, planetary shields, and an armada of warships standing guard. No enemy had ever dared approach it. Until now. The first explosion came without warning. One of the primary defense satellites shattered into burning fragments, raining debris across the upper atmosphere. Before alarms could even sound, 2 more exploded. In the high command chamber, Warlord Xortal stared at the holomap in disbelief. It was impossible. There were no enemy ships detected, no fleets approaching. Just destruction, spreading across their defenses like a silent plague. Then, the shields over the capital failed. Panic erupted in the streets below. The sky, once protected by an unbreakable barrier, was now exposed. Citizens looked up in horror, their voices drowned by the shrieking alarms. The humans were here. Except, they still couldn't be seen. Dominion Prime's planetary cannons fired wildly into the sky, searching for an enemy that refused to reveal itself. Their warships scrambled, scanning for any sign of incoming attacks. There was nothing. And then the executions began. High-ranking officials were found dead in their chambers, their throats slit without a single alarm being triggered. Dominion officers vanished from their heavily guarded bunkers. The palace guards, elite warriors trained for decades, were slaughtered where they stood. No grand battles, no open war, just whispers in the dark, and silence that followed. Xortal finally understood. Earth was not here to fight. Earth was here to erase them. The once mighty halls of the Dominion High Command were now filled with fear. Xortal stood in the war chamber, surrounded by his last remaining generals. Their usual arrogance was gone, replaced by wide eyes and twitching claws. The air was thick with panic. Dominion Prime was falling. No ships, no armies, no fleets. Only death, unseen, unstoppable, and creeping closer with every hour. A transmission interrupted their whispers. It wasn't Dominion security. It was them. The screen flickered, revealing a human. A figure in a dark combat suit, face hidden behind a helmet, eyes glowing with cold precision. A ghost. A reaper. Then the voice spoke. This is the price of your arrogance. Before anyone could react, the lights flickered. A scream rang out. One of the warlords clutched his throat, blood gushing between his fingers. He collapsed before his bodyguards could even raise their weapons. They were here. Panic broke out. Generals drew their plasma blades, their eyes darting in every direction. But there was no one. Just shadows and the feeling of something watching. Xortal's claws tightened into fists. "Show yourself, coward," he roared. A whisper came from the darkness. "We already have." The doors slammed shut. The Dominion's rulers had become prey. One by one, the lights went out. And in the darkness, Earth's judgment was delivered. The screams didn't last long. The High Command Chamber, once the heart of the Dominion Empire, was now a slaughterhouse. The warlords, mighty rulers of entire star systems, lay dead, their blood pooling across the polished floors. Hector Tal had fought. He had roared, he had swung his blade, but it was futile. The humans were shadows, moving too fast, too silent. By the time his blade struck the air, they were already behind him. Now he lay on the cold ground, gasping for breath, his strength draining away. A deep wound burned in his chest, and his vision blurred. His empire was gone. The last thing he saw was a human standing over him, their helmet reflecting the red glow of the fires outside. "Your crimes were heard across the stars," the voice said, emotionless. "Now, so is your punishment." Zortal's world faded to black. Outside, Dominion Prime burned. The people who once lived under the warlord's rule ran through the streets, desperate to escape the flames. The once mighty Dominion fleet, scattered and leaderless, fled into the darkness of space. There was no mercy. Humanity had sent a message to every empire, every warlord, every species that once looked down on them. This was the price of harming the human child. The fires of Dominion Prime burned for days. Across the galaxy, the news spread like a storm. The Dominion Empire, once feared, was no more. Its warlords lay dead, its armies scattered, its homeworld reduced to ashes. And the reason? A single human child. The surviving species of the Galactic Council watched in horror. They had seen the broadcast. They had witnessed what had happened to the Dominion. Some had once mocked humanity, calling them a weak, primitive race. Not anymore. Now, they spoke of them in whispers, not as prey, not as equals, but as monsters in the dark. Humanity had not come with fleets. They had not conquered. They had punished. And their message was clear. Harm one of ours, and we will end you. In the void of space, aboard an invisible warship, the leader of the human strike force watched the final transmissions. The Dominion had been erased. The mission was complete. A soldier approached. "Orders, sir." The leader stood, staring into the endless blackness beyond the window. "We wait." The galaxy had learned its lesson. For now, years passed. The Dominion Empire was nothing more than a memory, a ghostly reminder of the price of arrogance. Across the galaxy, no species dared challenge humanity again. Fear had taken root. In darkened council chambers, rulers whispered about the night Dominion Prime burned, about the silent assassins that had erased an empire. Some doubted the stories, believing them exaggerated. Others knew better. They had seen the broadcasts. They had heard the final screams. And they understood the truth. Humanity was not a race to be ruled, not a race to be threatened. They were a force of nature, a storm waiting to be unleashed. On Earth, in a quiet home on the outskirts of a city, a woman knelt before a small grave. The wind rustled through the trees as she placed a single white flower on the headstone. The name carved into the stone was her child's. Her fingers trembled as she traced the letters, a silent grief pressing against her heart. But she did not cry. She had already shed her tears. And she knew. The galaxy had wept for her as well. Far above, hidden among the stars, a fleet of silent warships drifted through the void, watching, waiting. Because if the galaxy ever forgot what happened, humanity would remind them.